Hey guys, just like to welcome everyone to the new channel where we'll be focusing on my tech related content. We'll be starting with some simple programming tutorials. We'll be using the language Python, and these are solely for beginners. Don't follow these tutorials if you've got some experience in programming. Now, we'll be focusing on some of the more complicated things at the start, and a lot of YouTubers don't like to focus on these things because they believe that these things will put you off programming and you just won't be able to understand them at first. But then they'll teach you things that rely on the more complicated things. And I think you need to understand the more complicated things, the fundamentals, because these things are fundamental to programming, and I think you need to understand them before you can be typing hello world programs and stuff like that. So we'll start on something a little complicated, but you guys should catch up quickly, and you just need to power through at first, and everything will be clear, and you'll have a great understanding. You'll have a better understanding than if you started on something easy. So we'll be looking at the three core components of a program first. These are three main aspects of one. Now, these are the pretext, the instructions, and the end. We'll be starting with the pretext. The pretext is a set of word or phrases that the computer processes to start moving quick enough to process the actual program. The pretext is basically where the processor gains its speed and momentum. It reads these phrases and it basically speeds it up. So by the time it gets to the complicated instructions, it can perform them quickly and accurately. It can be thought of as a runway, like how a plane has to accelerate on the runway before it takes off. And in this case, the runway is the pretext and the sky is the instructions. And it is essential to use words and phrases that computers process quite frequently and are therefore optimized to process. Your pretext must cater to the popular culture of the internet. So basically, in order for a pretext to be effective, the processor has to slowly process them faster. And processors process words that are used commonly faster because they're optimized to do so. So because of this, most pretexts, the industry standard, Google sets the industry standard, and their pretext contains, I know this sounds a little ridiculous and you're going to be thinking, come on, what the fuck are you on about? But memes. They contain memes. I know this sounds a bit ridiculous, but I want you to think of just your personal experience, the phrases that you hear repeated again and again, over and over on the internet. And I guarantee you will be able to remember only memes. I mean, there's not enough focus on this in programming. A lot of people don't know the pretext even exists. I've met a programmer before. He's been programming 5 years. He graduated university. He didn't even know he needed memes at the start of his program. It's ridiculous. But basically, Google's pretext, the official pretext of Google, contains over 1,000 memes, and they're all relatively dank, but I prefer to use my own set of pretexts. I just prefer it in my personal experience. In most programs, it runs faster. Google's pretext is optimized for a search engine, but mostly I won't be using search engine. It's not important enough. I don't need that much speed, if you know what I mean. It's just a waste of speed. And now we'll be going on to the instructions, and these are pretty overvalued. I mean, it's basically the set of commands issued by the programmer that tells the computer what to do. And contrary to what the media and non-programmers and TV would have you believe, this is not nearly the most important part of the program, as it relies heavily on the pretext. I mean, when you think of the people who are making the biggest difference right now in computer science, saving lives with research and stuff, I mean, it's not the people writing the instructions, adding two and two. It's the people devising the set of memes that allows a processor to accelerate the fastest. And it's important the order of the memes as well. We'll go on to that later. And sometimes, I mean, people don't understand just how complicated the pretext is, which is why I'm starting off with it, because I think you need to understand what you're in for. But basically, the instructions are pretty overstated. I mean, I think you can be a programmer without even knowing them. Just no memes. Now we'll go on to the end. The end is the end of your program, and is basically the opposite of the pretext. And it is good practice. Like, I know I'm saying practice loosely because on OS X and Linux distros, it is essential. I mean, you can't run your program on Linux or OS X without end. But on Windows you can, and I think it's pretty terrible. I mean, Windows computers are 10 times slower on average. The average Windows user's computer will be 10 times slower because programs don't include an end or aren't mandated to. And it's just lazy programmers who couldn't be bothered to add a couple of unpopular phrases. It's disgusting. I fucking hate them. But okay, now we'll just describe it. It is good practice to end your program with text that computers do not commonly process, so as to ensure that the processor slows down and is not still using the program's bandwidth after the program is finished. It's basically the opposite of the pretext. You're not speeding the processor up now with phrases that it commonly processes, you're slowing it down with phrases that it doesn't commonly process. And to do this, you're going to need an understanding of your user, because how are you supposed to know what how are you supposed to know what a random user doesn't type frequently? I mean, you can't know that, right? Wrong. Many ad networks will allow you to see your user's search history if you pay them a little bit, and we'll go on to that later, the best ad networks to do so. But for now, we'll just be focusing on just this, I guess. But basically, once you can see their search history and the sites they frequent, you can form a pretty good opinion of what they would and wouldn't say. So, for example, a Reddit user wouldn't say something like, "Oh, I just got back with my girlfriend." Girlfriend. A Reddit user wouldn't say that word at all. I mean, so you can just spam that in a bunch of times if they go on Reddit or something like that. There are a lot of other sites like that. But yeah, and let's go on to an actual program. I know I'm talking about it a lot, but let's see it in action. This is, you should be able to identify it as the pretext. This is the runway, the program's runway. Now, here's some pretty popular memes. These are my personal opinions. Like, I like these memes, so I chose them. I'm not sure if they're most efficient. I'm pretty sure Google's industry standard is going to be a little bit more efficient than mine, but I think it's a good pretext, and I think you could learn from it, so I'll include it in the description below. Now we'll look at the actual instructions, and these are what the computer actually reads and runs. And we'll start off explaining this line right here. This is a function, and for those of you that haven't done this in maths or don't know, this is basically every time we call hello world in the program, which we have here, every time we type that, it'll just run these set of instructions. And it's essential to do that for all instructions. All instructions that the program reads and isn't an if statement have to be in a function. Right. So we'll just go over this. Now, I haven't explained if statements, so we'll do that right now. These are pretty much one of the fundamentals of programming. An if statement is basically the word if followed by a statement, and if it's true, the computer will run it, and if it's false, it won't. So, for example, here, if 2 is greater than 1, which it is, then read the next instruction, read the next instruction, read the next instruction, and so on. Now, you need 5 if statements for every single actual statement. Now, this is just how computers work. This is how their AND gates are formatted. It's how they're laid out. I mean, it's just how it is. I could go on for ages explaining it, but that really isn't necessary. You just need to know you have to do it, or you could seriously damage your or someone else's computer. So now we'll look at the next part. Print hello world. Now, what this basically does, a lot of people think print prints out an actual sheet of paper, but it doesn't. It just outputs something to the console, and we'll just see that now. Hello world. See, pretty simple. And now here's our next 5 statements, because we're going to have a statement here. 5 if statements, all true, so they all run, and the next line is hello world. Now what this hello world does is it basically just calls this function up here and it runs everything. So pretty simple stuff. Now here is our end statement. Here's the end section of our program. Now this stuff doesn't have to be as long as the pretext. It just needs maybe 2 unpopular opinions. We're running out of time here, so I'll finish this up quick. In my case, Doctor Who is not a good show, and I don't support gay marriage. Just 2 unpopular opinions. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Please subscribe or leave a like if you have, and stay tuned for later tutorials. See you guys.